Alrighty, what's good YouTube? Today I'm gonna be making a video about how I moved out of home at 18 years old, and hopefully this sheds some light on how to do it. I don't believe it is impossible. I see a lot of people on TikTok these days, talking about how it's impossible, cost of living, all that bullshit. I think it actually is really possible, and I think anyone can do it. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So for a bit of backstory, I moved out at the start of 2025 when I just graduated high school. I had fuck all money to my name. I didn't even own a car, and I moved about 5 hours away from home. Yeah, so why did I move out? I think that's something a lot of people got to understand is moving out may not always be the best thing. Like, yeah, I love it. I think it's amazing. But, if you have a good home and you have no reason to move out, then you should be thugging that shit out because that is a cheat code to save money. And there ain't no shame in staying at home, post high school to save money. But I ended up moving out to go to university, and I didn't end up living on campus. If I was living on campus, this would be a pretty short video, but I didn't do that. I actually moved into a family friend's house, and yeah, so I kind of lived there for a little bit, and then I moved into a share house with some friends, and then now me and my girlfriend have our own place, and I am 19 as of this year, so that's pretty good. Alright, so now to actually get into how I would recommend moving out if you are in this position, is the first thing you gotta do is you gotta find accommodation. You've gotta have that lined up, guys. I see a lot of people just try and move, and they fucking put balls to the wall. They fucking, drive off, travel, go wherever they want, multiple hours away from home, have nothing lined up, and it's people underestimate how hard it is to get accommodation and how to even do some of these things. So the first step is having accommodation lined up, ready to go for when you go there. I do understand that a lot of rentals you got to inspect them in person, and you can't do that especially if the place you're moving to is far away. But yeah, you got to try and see what you can do. You can pay people to inspect places for you. You can do all sorts of things. There are workarounds. You just got to be creative with it. But yeah, have accommodation lined up. And the other thing I will put on this is everyone likes to think, oh, I'm gonna get a studio apartment for my first house, $500 a week, that's cool. But what they don't realize is when you're renting, especially through a realtor, real estate agent, they care about experience. Experience does matter, and having no experience is not better than having bad experience. You need experience to do this, otherwise you'll never get approved. So you might be thinking, well, how do I get experience if I need experience to get experience? It's a bit of a fucking play on words. The thing I recommend to everyone is you've got to pick a shit house. You really do. If you're an 18-year-old moving out of home, these motherfuckers will look at your application and go, I'm not renting my nice house to an 18-year-old. They're gonna throw parties, drink, be retarded. Like, I don't want that in my house. So the way I went about it was, obviously I had moved in with family friends to start off with, but after that I did have to start my rental experience and actually find a place of my own. And so what I did was I found a shit house. There was literally holes in the fucking walls, like going to the outside world. You'd have leaks of light coming in, like the house was fucked. But yeah, you have to find a shit house like that, something that someone's gonna think, you know what, if an 18-year-old breaks it, it doesn't matter. So I chose a house like that, and to help with the cost, because originally this house was about $600 a week, I moved in with my girlfriend and my friend and his girlfriend, and we all signed on for a year lease. That worked really well, because instead of paying $600 a week, it was down to $150 each, and that's really good, especially when you're young and you have university and work. Any way you can save money is good. But yeah, that's kind of what I recommend for accommodation, and all I've got to say about that in that regards is, find a shit house, have it lined up before you move. If you can do a share house, do it. It's going to be cheaper, you're going to save more money. Don't underestimate how much this shit can cost, especially when you start chucking utilities and groceries and whatnot. Okay, so on to the next thing that does help is also having a job lined up. That is pretty hard to do, I will admit. A lot of these places want interviews in person, especially if you're going into fast food or some casual job. I was lucky in the sense that the owner for the fast food chain I worked at the time owned another shop where I was moving to, so I was able just to transfer and it was all good. But yeah, have a look on Facebook. I recommend that. A lot of these Facebook groups, people will be posting job listings, and they post it there because they can't afford the big platforms like Seek or Indeed. Those places charge thousands. So if you can work at a small family business, that's probably the best move. But yeah, try and have something lined up, or if you can't have something lined up, you're going to need to save. You're going to need to have a few, ideally a couple thousand or a couple hundred in saving. It all kind of depends on accommodation. The less of these things you have lined up, the more you need saved up. So yeah, if you don't have a job lined up and you don't have accommodation, you're gonna want a couple thousand, like maybe 2-3 grand. If you do have accommodation, you don't have a job, well then that drops a little bit, you know. Now maybe you only need $1,000, or maybe, you know, just a couple of weeks worth of rent to keep you going. But yeah, try and find a job, take anything. Yeah, do what you can to find employment. That's very important. And on to the third thing about savings, like what sort of savings you need. I did kind of just touch on that. Like, you know, if you have accommodation and a job lined up like I did, I moved out with fucking $600 to my name, $700. Like, I had fuck all money, right? And it worked because I was able just to work the next week, you know, continue my pay cycle. That was a dream situation, I will be honest. I think a lot of people won't be in that situation, so to them I say save up a bit, you know. If you have accommodation, save up 6 weeks worth of rent, 4 weeks worth of rent, because, you know, if you can't find a casual jobs in 6 weeks, there's probably a bigger underlying issue, you know. And then something else I wanted to kind of talk about in this video was sustaining the lifestyle, I guess, of just living on your own or with your girlfriend or whatever. The first one is you gotta save, you know. It's really easy when you work a casual job to get your paycheck and be like, fuck, I just want to spend my money, you know. I want to buy a big feed off Uber Eats, or, you know, I want to get tons of McDonald's or KFC, just fucking chow down on that shit, you know. And it's because you worked, you know. You, like, the underlying truth is you did work hard, you know. You slaved away 30 hours that week, you know. Like, you want to spend it, but you got to be smart enough not to do that. Pay yourself a salary, you know. As soon as you get your paycheck, put away 200, put away 100, put away 50, whatever you can, because you want to end the next year with more money than you started the year with, right? Unless there's a reason, like you bought a car or something. That's obviously the exception, not the rule. But yeah, so do that. Invest if you're into that. I recommend it. I bought a few stocks. Crypto at the time was doing good, but, you know, crypto is in a weird fucking situation now, so I wouldn't touch it. But buying shares, definitely should do that. Just an ETF or an index fund, you know. You're not going to outperform it by picking individual stocks. You know, the S&P 500 will do good, or just your local stock exchange is equivalent. You know, invest in whatever you want, just something safe. Then the next thing is be money hungry. Now that doesn't mean, you know, open a vending machine business, start drop shipping, start doing any of that bullshit. What it does mean is when you're offered, you know, an extra shift at work, you pick that up. When someone offers you $50 to help them change a tire, you do that, you know, because what people underestimate is not having a safety net. Like, your life can take a fucking big turn for the worse if you just don't save, you know. Having a safety net does help. Obviously, I moved with no savings, right? So I didn't have that safety net, and that was a risk, you know. That probably wasn't the best thing, but I have been building it ever since, and that's kind of what you want to do, you know, because fucking you might get a bill out of nowhere, you know, your car might break down, you might get evicted. Having that money just allows you to keep going. When you don't have it, you're in a world of hurt, you know. You start doing things like asking family for money, asking your girlfriend for money, you know, doing all sorts of weird and wonderful shit. And that's kind of a position you don't want to be in. You never want to be in debt to family or anything like that. So yeah, save money, take extra shifts, do whatever you can to get extra income. Again, that's not to say like slave away, you know, 100-hour weeks, but do what you can. Finally, just to wrap it up, I just want to say, like, don't neglect yourself. Yeah, you will be working a shit ton. You'll be making money. You'll be doing things like going to uni on top of that. But, you know, you got to take time for yourself. Maintain the relationships you have with your friends, your girlfriends, your boyfriends, even, like, whatever you're into. Maintain that. Maintain yourself, you know. If you're just a wreck at the end of every week, and, you know, that's going to take a toll on you, and this whole thing will quickly end. So yeah, don't do that. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, I guess.